Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast, Engaging Through Enrichment, How the Animal Enrichment Committee Works to Combat Compassion Fatigue. And it's presented by Jennifer Jones, an Animal Enrichment Coordinator, Lead Animal Technician at University of Michigan Medical School. I'm Susie Valdez of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We're delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots. LabRoots is the leading scientific social networking website and producer of educational virtual events and webinars. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We encourage you to participate by submitting as many questions as you want at any time during the presentation. Just click on that Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. Type the questions into the drop-down box that appear on the screen, and we'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. If you have any trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, click on that Help Desk button located onto the promotional board at the bottom center of your screen, or use that Ask a Question box. This presentation is educational and thus offers continuing education credits. Click on the accreditation button located on the promotional board at the bottom center of your screen and follow the process to obtain those credits. Please join me now in welcoming our presenter, Jennifer Jones. I will now turn the presentation over to her. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. As Susie said, my name is Jenny Jones. I'm an at the University of Michigan. I am very excited to talk to you today about how we use our animal enrichment program to help combat compassion fatigue. I will admit that I am an animal person, not a people person. I think many of you can relate. That's how we ended up in this field in the first place. But amusingly, I have spent most of my time in the last year or so talking about people, how to communicate with them, and how to better improve the environment in the workplace. And as strange as it is for me to be focused on people, I think that we will find that it is imperative that we give the same level of care to our human issues as we do to our animal concerns. So today, I'm going to do a brief overview of compassion fatigue in the animal sciences, including our initial efforts within our department at education and mitigation. I will jump to a description of our Animal Enrichment Committee, its current structure and mission. I think it is really important to understand what a strong foundation this committee has and how that helps it excel in areas even outside of providing animal enrichment. I will then jump to our new directions to address compassion fatigue. We are always looking for ways to improve our efforts, and hopefully you'll see some of the improvements we've made as we've continued to evaluate our program. So compassion fatigue can be described as basically a chronic state of stress that people who are in a caregiving situation find themselves in. It is often called secondary trauma. So by dealing with either people or animals in distress, you find yourself in a perpetual state of stress and tension. Here you can see the common symptoms, and they range from relatively mild to very severe. It just depends on how it affects you. So obviously, this can interfere with both your everyday life at home and at work. So looking at in the recent years, there's been an increased awareness of how compassion fatigue can impact all of us that are involved in laboratory animal science. You can see pictured here, there's an informational pamphlet from ALAS describing the cost of caring. And recently on one of their last Pro covers, they featured an article about how your well-being matters and how institutions can mitigate compassion fatigue. They are also hosting a compassion fatigue related webinar in February. So for those of us in the animal sciences, it might be hard for us to receive outside support from what we would consider our normal support groups, say of family or friends. And it can be harder for us than someone in a more traditional caring field, where they first recognized issues such as compassion fatigue. So nurses, EMTs, and other first responders, it's easy for people outside of those fields to recognize the value of their work. I think this would look familiar to a lot of us, as it says, "Oh, I could never do your job. I love animals too much." And I think many of us have been tempted to reply something along the lines of, "I think you meant to say thank you for your service." I have had many, many versions of this interaction. I refer to it as the sad head tilt, which, since you can't see me on the webcam, I can't demonstrate, but you say what you do for a living and you get the, "Oh, really?" And I have experienced this even when dealing with medical professionals. So people that you would think have a basis of scientific knowledge and an understanding of what we do. So if you think about it, why do people have trouble providing support for a family member or friend who's dealing with issues in our job? Some of it is our field has a lack of transparency, which leads to a lack of understanding of what we do and why it's important. And if you think about it farther, someone who's experiencing compassion fatigue, so basically they're in a moment where they're stressed by what they do or sad about it, they're not in a good position to educate that family member or friend about what we do and why it matters. So since we can't get support from those traditional places, the workplace can step up to fill that gap and provide some of these essential services. So in addition to basically being what I think is the right thing to do, there are potential benefits to the workplace for providing support for employees. Hopefully, you could see a reduction in turnover. People are less fatigued. They'd be more likely to stay. An increase in morale and motivation. So you might say improvements in efficiency, general demeanor. Also, an increased ability to handle the day-to-day stressors at work appropriately. And I think this is a big one. When people are experiencing compassion fatigue, they are at such a heightened state of stress that something small and simple that they might have been able to deal with normally can be especially agitating. And this can lead to increased friction between coworkers. Something simple that you might consider petty that could have been easily worked through and moved past before suddenly becomes a much bigger deal. It can also be seen between staff and researchers. So you have an animal care technician and they come upon a situation where maybe a lab didn't do something following the correct SOP. Typically a minor issue, take it to a supervisor, and sometimes the result of having these employees who are so stressed or fatigued is it becomes a big situation. Say you have an employee yelling at a researcher, and this is an impact to your customer service as well. So hopefully if the workplace steps up and helps employees find different ways to deal with this, you can have smooth relationships between coworkers and customers. So our department, after recognizing that compassion fatigue was a big, basically mental health crisis in our field, what do we do first? So a team at the university reached out to the professional counselors that were available through our university's employee assistance program. So they reached out to them and they discussed some of the unique challenges that we face in our field. They made sure that these counselors were able to listen and then provide support appropriately to people. You don't want to be in a situation where you deal with a counselor who would make you feel more guilty about what you do. And in some cases, counselors themselves can experience a secondary trauma if they are not prepared for the types of situations they might be hearing about. So by addressing this first, we knew that we were in a good place with our professional counselors. They helped set up educational seminars for the entirety of the department. So they held several different large seminars featuring talks from both our peers and these professional counselors to discuss the different complications people might see in compassion fatigue. And having the counselors there also helps lend legitimacy to these seminars, which helps people take it more seriously. Since that time, we have added information into all of our training programs for our animal handlers. So both husbandry and lab staff both receive information, just a snippet, much like how we explain to people that animal allergies are common when working with animals. We now also explain about compassion fatigue and its symptoms and the resources that are available for people should they choose it. This was a very important first step. So now we've recognized that this exists, that it is completely normal, because I know a lot of people who have been in the field a long time will know that it wasn't something we used to talk about. So for some people, just having a name for it, being able to acknowledge it and understand that you are not alone was enough to help them on their own address these issues and move on and feel better. So it's a very important step to just make sure everyone knows what it is, and then we continue to find different ways at work to help them deal with it. So jumping real quick to the Animal Enrichment Committee, which is my happy place. In its simplest form, it is a committee that exists to help maintain, evaluate, and refine our animal enrichment program. And this is the program across our whole campus. We are constantly striving for improvement. We never treat our program as if it's finished. This committee was founded at least 10 years ago by a single husbandry technician who saw room for change. In recent years, we've all seen a big shift in not only how enrichment is viewed, but what is required. So in that time, as these things have changed, this committee has been able to lead to big changes being implemented in our whole program. So the committee meets monthly, where we cover new ideas as well as evaluate how our current program is doing. The structure of our committee, I think, is part of what gives it a lot of its strength. So we are open to everyone in the department. As you can see, we have representatives from our vet staff, our management, training corps, faculty vets, our husbandry staff, and of course myself, our Animal Enrichment Coordinator. We have discovered it is valuable to have people from all these different sections, not only because you gain a greater perspective, we also have found that we can make more efficient and better decisions regarding enrichment when you have all the people in one space. So you have someone who brings an idea, you can look to management and see if it would be financially possible. You have faculty veterinarians there to talk about safety and other animal welfare concerns. And then you have your husbandry staff to tell you if it's feasible to add that in to their everyday care of the animals. We are working to include more lab staff in our program. Right now we have a lot of involvement from our non-human primate labs, which makes sense as that's a more dynamic part of our program. We have some of our pig labs who have reached out to let us know that basically the stuff that we don't have time for our husbandry technicians to do, such as sit with the pig while it plays in the kiddie pool, that they have undergrads that they would be willing to volunteer for that task. And we also have a volunteer that came to us from a mouse lab, but wanted to be more connected with the other animals that we had, and she helps build extra enrichment. And if you watch my colleague Sarah's presentation on our rabbit social housing program, you will understand that we need a lot of additional enrichment to keep those socially housed rabbits happy. So the Animal Enrichment Committee was, of course, not designed with compassion fatigue in mind. But if you look at the structure and how it works, you can see that it is a natural fit to help combat compassion fatigue. The committee provides a place for technicians and anyone from the department to have their ideas and concerns heard. And this in and of itself can be a big help. It gives our staff a feeling of control, and they benefit from having a structured process. Every idea is brought to the committee in the same way. We provide feedback on if we'd be able to do it. If not, why the idea is rejected, what changes we could possibly make to make it work. This leaves people feeling more respected. And then over the years, we've managed to make quite a few improvements that have improved the welfare of our animals. In addition, the Animal Enrichment Committee was interested in becoming more involved in engaging our employees because we discovered that typically the employees who want to participate in the Animal Enrichment Committee are those who are very passionate and excited about enriching the lives of their animals, and they are also more susceptible to compassion fatigue. So we wanted to see these people staying with us and being productive members of our team. So we started with some simple efforts to expand our community, basically. We recognized that being involved in the committee was beneficial to people. So how do we expand this to reach more staff within our department? So we started looking at these efforts to increase involvement. We were hoping we would find an untapped resource of staff that might be eager to volunteer some extra time to help with enrichment, and we wanted to spread those positive benefits to as many people as possible. One of our very first projects was a holiday ornament sale. Our vet techs actually came up with the idea and got the supplies to make those adorable mouse candy cane covers that you can see in the picture. We got those along with a few other holiday-themed mouse things and sold them to people within the department, the proceeds of which went to purchasing special enrichment items that were not in our budget. So we bought a new puzzle feeder for non-human primates. This ended up being very popular with our office staff, and we partially surmised that they might just be less tired of looking at mice, but they were very excited to have a little mouse trinket and also to know that some other animal was going to get something fun because of it. This was a learning experience, and our technicians were actually less enthusiastic about it. We had some pushback on they felt that it was inappropriate, basically to be raising money to purchase things that they felt that we should be able to purchase through our normal program. So going forward, if we were ever to do something similar, we've already picked out several outside institutions that also benefit animals in research that we feel that people might be more excited about donating to, such as Homes for Heroes or Monkey Island, where they take retired laboratory primates. Our next step was we instituted a toilet paper tube recycling program. So the first part of that was sending out the adhesive from the tubes to make sure it was safe for our animals. Then we posted signs in all of our areas alerting lab staff that we could take collections of toilet paper tubes and paper towel tubes. We autoclave them and then give them to the animals. This was our easiest and best way to connect with our lab staff, which they can be harder to loop in on some of our efforts. They were very excited, one, to be able to contribute, and then two, they could see the results very easily because they walked in their rooms and could see mice with living inside their little toilet paper tubes. We expanded the program to also include plastic milk or water jugs, which we give frequently to our pigs who love to destroy them with great enthusiasm. To further expand our community engagement, we started holding opportunities for socialization and training with our large animals. We had a large cat study involving vaccines, and all of those cats were going to be up for adoption. So we allowed technicians to sign up in groups of 2 to come sit with them and provide a little additional, basically, love. And this allowed several benefits for our technicians. One, they got to spend some time, hopefully, with a person they enjoyed since they signed up with them. And they got some extra cat cuddles in and knew that these cats were going to go live their life out after being adopted. We also have a group of dogs right now that are preparing for adoption. So they have a similar socialization and play hour where technicians can join in and help wrangle them in their play area. We've expanded the training program. We have a great technician who's pictured there, Kayla, who I'm pretty impressed can get all the beagles to sit at once. And so she's been working on basic commands and obedience, again, to assist them when they're adopted out. We have expanded it to include walks on leash through the vivarium. This has had the fun added benefit of basically the dogs bring joy wherever they go, because who doesn't want to run into a puppy in the hallway? We also had signs made alerting research staff that they would see the dogs out and about and the purpose of it and what to do when they saw them. So we've even extended that fun benefit of people that might not run into them still know that they're out and about and having these fun walks. And recently, we started doing office visits. So those of us with offices in the vivarium can sign out a dog for an hour at a time. The dog can come to the office, and it has special soft beds and other toys that they can't have normally in their kennels. We've already seen great benefit. Our shyest dog almost immediately came out of her shell when she got some quality alone time. And this has been a great way not only to enrich the dogs, but also the people in their offices, and to highlight that we have these amazing dogs that will be available for adoption. Another way we thought to expand was to create an event that we could sponsor for Tech Week, which is currently going on right now. So we sponsored in our first year, I want to say 2015, a mural painting competition. As you can see, it was an excellent team building activity. We got some unexpected artistic talent, at least I was fairly impressed. The murals are all painted on sheets and they are machine washable. So we rotate them through our large animal room to provide additional visual enrichment. There were also a few that were just kind of weird, so not entirely unexpected. My favorite anecdote, though it does kind of hurt my feelings a bit, is one of our large animal users saw these and was like, well, what's that for? And I explained that this is the way to just provide a change of scenery and additional visual stimulation. She thought on it for a moment and then said, oh, well, why wouldn't we just give them something they might actually want to see? Obviously, she was not impressed with our artistic talents, but it got her to think about what she could provide for her animals in a different way. And that lab actually purchased large decals with photographs of pasture scenes and sheep, and they placed those on the walls of their recovery room. So their sheep benefited from this project in a way that we couldn't even have imagined. Right now, we are continuing the tradition. These are a few pictures from the submissions from our Tech Week Piñata making contest this year. The voting is going on as I speak, and we will crown a winner tomorrow. They will win the right to pie a supervisor in the face, so we will see how that goes. It has so far been a fun, positive, team-building experience. And then our non-human primates and pigs will get to completely destroy the piñatas under supervision next week. So since those Tech Week events and other events such as the socialization little parties were so successful, we're like, well, how do we expand this even farther? We had reached quite a few people, but we thought we could reach more and make it more consistent. At this point, the Tech Week is once a year, and then some of the other projects were just sort of when we had different resources available. So we thought about it. We set the goals of wanting to create these events that would be relaxing and inclusive and just build that sense of community. We wanted as many of our techs and other staff to be involved. And then since we were the Animal Enrichment Committee, we wanted to make usable items that can actually be integrated into our regular enrichment program. So the obstacles to accomplish this, you'll be very familiar with. The biggest are time and money. Obviously, it takes time for staff to participate in any event, time for the staff to then take the enrichment items and give them to the animals, and then money for materials. The harder to pin down obstacle is we want people to understand and appreciate the impact of the work. So obviously, we're glad that people have fun and can goof around and make a piñata, but we want that connection to the animal that receives it so that they can recognize that they're benefiting the animals in addition to having a good time. So to overcome these obstacles, we worked to design activities that were relatively inexpensive, could be completed in a short amount of time, and for the most part can be completed in the individual break rooms across our different buildings. We have a large campus. We have animals in over 10 different buildings, and so the time it takes to bring the staff together is a much larger time commitment than we typically would get support for. So if they can do it in their own building, then we can do like we did with the piñata contest, where the voting poll actually goes live to everyone in the department, so everyone can still see what everyone else did. So to give you an idea of inexpensive activities, for the mural painting contest, all we had to purchase were the bed sheets for each team, and all of our paint was donated. And then for the piñata contest, it was probably less than $60 for the supplies that we purchased. And this is going to be so that over 120 different people can participate in this event. So another way to overcome some of those obstacles was we were like, well, why don't we schedule out and plan farther in advance? So we created what you're seeing is a mock-up of the first calendar we kind of sketched out. And as you can see, we have to be flexible, since originally we were going to save piñatas for the springtime, and they've got moved to our Tech Week event. So by planning things out, it can assist in planning staff participation, which can help get support from management for that time, because you can give them an idea of this time I want to bring everyone together, it'll be longer, but this other one they can do in their break room in increments of 15 minutes, which it really helps to have that manager buy-in ahead of time. Also, when you're planning it out, having that consistency in scheduling improves the usefulness of the items that are created. Since we actually want to use them in our program, we can plan ahead in October and say, we know we're going to do pumpkins. How many animals do we have that can receive them? In what way do they need to receive them? Do they have to be supervised? And you can have it all planned out ahead of time so you don't end up with pumpkins rotting before they can get used. Another obstacle that we still struggle at times to overcome is there can be a difficulty finding fun things that we can do for all species. We have many, many more mice than we have other animals, so most of our technicians work primarily with mice. But a lot of the fun ideas that we come up with are centered around our larger species. So we are still working on how to come up with ideas for all the different species. Here is an example of a very successful event. This is our pumpkin carving contest from last year. We opened it up to anyone in the department, so I brought pumpkins to all of the husbandry teams, our vet techs, all the way to our office, even though they looked very startled when I arrived with the pumpkin, our rodent health surveillance team, our trainers, and actually our vet residents ended up carving the winning pumpkins. So everyone carved pumpkins, and then they were given to species all the way from rabbits up to our non-human primates. So that last obstacle of helping people realize the benefit and impact of the enrichment that they've created, we focused on communication and how can we highlight how we use those items that they made. One of the ways that we do this is by highlighting it at our all-staff meeting. one of the few times that we're all gathered together. Sometimes this is as passive as we started including fun pictures taken by our communications person as a screensaver before and in between presentations. This year, the Animal Enrichment Committee created a thank you card, which is personally one of my favorites. A lot of us have worked with the animals for a long time, and we've never had a picture to have. And so this is a way that we get that positive, you get a smiling pig and a happy looking sheep, and you get to see the dogs enjoying all the stuff that we do for them. We still struggle with how best to loop people in so that they really feel that impact, but we're at a point where obviously you can't have 88 technicians watching one pig destroy one pumpkin. So we're still working on that. To continue on communication, it can be really easy to lose sense of the bigger picture when you're changing cages every day or cleaning cages. So we strive to highlight how research benefits both animals and people. In our monthly newsletter that goes out to our department staff and then all of the researchers as well, anyone in our animal care and use program, they highlight a different research project at the university and how it is benefiting people in the real world. We also host lunch and learn events or brown bag lunches where primarily technicians can come and listen to a researcher talk about their current projects. It has been a really fun way to connect, say, those mice that you've been taking care of for a year, and suddenly you know the bigger picture of what they're a part of. Also, work really hard to encourage continuing education. At least in our program, a lot of our technicians are very well educated, and changing cages and routine husbandry can be fairly monotonous. So we encourage participation in ALAS. Here are just two posters that are examples of the many that we've taken to ALAS in recent years. We host webinars, a technician journal club, keep people engaged in the science and understanding, and giving them something a little more interesting to focus on. We are so fortunate to have the Refinement and Enrichment Advancements Laboratory here at the university. I stole this description from their website. It was founded by some of our faculty vets. It brings together those faculty vets along with different researchers, our vet techs, husbandry techs, and residents, all in the spirit of finding ways to improve the welfare of our animals and backing it up with the science. As anyone who has worked to change enrichment or change even basic husbandry care, such as bedding or nesting materials for rodents, you know that you get a lot of pushback from researchers. So having this lab on campus is a great way to be like, oh, we understand your concerns, and here's the study that we did to show that our technicians could still find sick or dead mice even with a significant amount of nesting material. This group also hosts training seminars, which have taught our staff different aspects of the process. So they've learned about study design, doing their own statistics, quality scientific writing. And this has been a great way to tap all those people that maybe have noticed a problem, have had an idea, but didn't know how to turn it into something. So we've had them turn out things that have turned into ALAS posters, also projects that have gone all the way to being full scientific papers. Here are, I know it's teeny tiny, but it's just some of the projects that have come out of having the real group on campus. So just to highlight a couple, one is which nest is best, and they looked at improving the survival of transgenic rabbit kits by improving their nesting. So they tested a couple different kinds, and they were able to make a substantial increase in the survival rate with something that was essentially a pretty straightforward project. They've also developed different behavioral ethograms. One they used as a health assessment in our feline vaccine study, and they actually found that they could pick up on behavioral changes before the cats showed any clinical signs of illness. I just think these are an example of how when you keep passionate people engaged, they can come up with some really quality projects. The Animal Enrichment Committee was fortunate to be able to partner with MISMR, the Michigan Society for Medical Research, to host 2 enrichment symposiums in 2016 and 2017. These symposiums were led by our committee, which allowed people to take ownership over all the different parts of the symposium. We contacted vendors, went through and found speakers of interest and contacted and reached out to them, designed the schedule for the day, made a call out for posters. So again, you get this huge sense of ownership and pride in what you're doing. And the overall outcome is also a day filled with excellent presentations on the science of enrichment, which we also include as many of our own technicians in attending as we can. I just can't say enough good things about this event. It's something that we will be hosting again in April. So going back to some of the more classic ways that people have addressed compassion fatigue and that we've tried at the university as well, one of the first things we tried was setting up a peer support group. And like it sounds, it was entirely peer-led with no professionals. The first effort produced some interesting results. There was a lot of interest from the staff, which I feel like shows that there was a need for it. But they were kind of difficult to manage. You had a mix of people. Some of these are technicians who have worked in the field for 10 years, and no one has ever asked them for these stories or allowed them to share them in an environment where they felt safe, which led to it being powerful, but also very emotional. This led to a bit of a reputation that some of these meetings were a bit depressing. So in these meetings, and I said it was a learning curve, separating out compassion fatigue and the importance of having a meeting to share those feelings versus burnout in general was a difficult challenge at first. When you open up the floor and let people get stuff out, it can be hard to separate between productive sharing and what becomes just negative venting. At the time, when we first started doing the peer support groups, they were only for technicians. The thought was that if you included people from different levels in the department, that you might end up with people feeling uncomfortable or that they were unable to share. So going forward, we decided that we needed a few different ways to help separate ourselves a bit from what was considered these sort of meetings that when one person was asked if they wanted to attend, they said, well, no, because I don't feel like crying today. So we wanted to sort of revamp the image a bit. Brings us to our new Compassion Fatigue Committee. So this slide is from our recent January meeting, and it highlights the new goals for 2018. So now, instead of just being open to technicians, this is open to all staff within the department, though it is still a safe space where people can share. But we've taken some steps to structure it a little bit and encourage people to first share positive experiences. And we're still working to make sure that we can have open, honest conversations without falling into too much talk of burnout. Our first meeting this year, we held that informational meeting, and then we followed it up with an enrichment event. So the Animal Enrichment Committee set us up with supplies to wrap presents for all the different species. So it led with a nice positive hands-on event, which helped people feel comfortable, and we still provided time at that point to share. It was a great way to kick off the new year. One of the most common things that you will hear when talking about compassion fatigue is self-care and the importance of it. I can't really agree with it more. I love the quotes that talk about how you need to take care of yourself because you want to give the best to everyone in your life. This illustration shows a lot of the common self-care tips, but again, it's a very personal thing. I always include the monkeys taking a bath because that's one of the first things on every list is take a quiet bubble bath. And while some people might find that relaxing, I have a coworker who thinks that that just sounds like the absolute worst. So when recommending it to a large group of people, it's important to emphasize that it is specific to the person. You want to build your resilience by doing these good things for yourself. But we did run into a lot of pushback. Primarily, you have people who come to work all day and care for animals, and they go home and have to care for their families. So you suggest, well, take time and read a book you enjoy, to which they respond, at what point in time do you think my 2 kids are going to let that happen? So we wanted to kind of look at how we could help people achieve a little self-care, maybe not at home. So again, from our January meeting, we looked at setting up small, manageable goals that could perhaps be accomplished even at work. And then by having them as a group goal, you find that you have a little bit of accountability. So our January goal was to add in one source of positive media per workday. And we focused on podcasts since a lot of our technicians have their earphones in all day and listen to a variety of podcasts. This is something that I've added to my own routine, and it can be quite uplifting to take a break from true crime podcasts, which, while interesting, can be a little depressing. And by setting these goals together, it also allows us to follow up on them in the next meeting. And we've also set up a shared Facebook group, and we're hoping that different types of people will benefit from having this increased structure around self-care goals. One of the last ways to help deal with compassion fatigue are memorial events. I think these can be a very important part of the grieving process. The ones pictured here were from our 2016 and 2017 Science of Enrichment Symposiums. So we simply invited people to fill out a card and then assembled them into a memorial wall. In the first symposium, we were a little bit worried about participation, just because you never know how people will feel about sharing. But it was incredibly moving to see how quickly people filled out their cards. We had comments from veterinarians who had been working in the field for 20 or 30 years that they still had a specific memory from vet school that they were excited to share. Some people just wrote the name of an animal. The following year, we did a similar memorial wall, and we also gave out seed paper in the shape of hearts so that people could take a little something home and plant a small memorial garden at their house. Our goal is to expand this into a much larger event at our university. We'd like to host a celebration event to, share the positive benefits of research, to have a moment to respect and appreciate the animal lives that we've used. Obviously, you run into transparency and openness issues if you want to do such a large event. So we're hoping to be able to connect with the Office of Research and have this larger scale event in the future. I think it would be a great way to help people at all different levels of research acknowledge the impact and, again, the animal lives that were used. So really, after putting this presentation together, I sat back and realized that I think the take-home point is that you have a hugely diverse staff. A lot of them are in very different places in their careers. As I mentioned, we have technicians that have been with us for 15 years. We have technicians that have been with us for 6 months. You have, vet techs, residents, and again, your office staff or your cage wash who don't deal with the animals on a daily basis. So having this wide range of plans set up to help address compassion fatigue can really make it a much more beneficial program to everyone. Because what works for one person might not work for everyone. And I really enjoy having the Animal Enrichment Committee be so involved in improving our overall community. Our program, as we've developed it, has been a little bit of trial and error. I will admit as well, there's a little bit of, well, what's the harm in basically having a more positive work environment, regardless of what you're trying to address. And then we've been working to pinpoint improvements we can make. So we do track staff participation and get numbers for each event that we have. We try to make sure that the items we're creating are useful and that the animals enjoy them. And we've been asking for staff feedback in anonymous surveys to try to see what type of services they would like to see more of, to see how they felt about the services that we have so far. So next step, global domination. I wish, but we do have a greater vision. So right now our program supports the Unit for Laboratory Animal Medicine, which is primarily the husbandry technicians and vet staff that support our overall research community. So we've talked about wanting to set it up to where anyone involved in research has these same resources. You hit hurdles there. We have hundreds of PIs. So each of those investigators then obviously has their own lab staff, which can range in number. So you quickly end up with thousands of people who are on animal protocols. And each of those laboratories has their own culture. So with some researchers, you're still going to hit that wall of not necessarily understanding the nuance of compassion fatigue. So you might have to start over with the education process. But we hope in the future we can expand and make sure that every single person who's on an animal protocol can in some way benefit from some of our ways that we use to combat compassion fatigue. So every enrichment presentation that I've given, oftentimes to our outreach programs to students of all ages, they always end with better welfare equals better science. So as we move forward to improve the care and welfare of our animals, we get better results. So with working now more with people and trying to combat compassion fatigue, I would argue that if you improve the welfare of your staff, it also improves the welfare of your animals, and you'll still end up with that better science. I would like to say a special thank you to Kaylee Bennett and Marion Esfelt, who were the first ones to recognize this need for a department-wide response to compassion fatigue. They reached out initially to the U of M counselors and have still been very active in improving our program, and they really got the ball rolling. Dr. Jenny Lofgren, who is the faculty advisor for the Animal Enrichment Committee, as well as the REAL Lab, and Sarah Thurston, who is my current co-conspirator in ongoing efforts to combat compassion fatigue. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Jennifer, for that informative presentation and your important research. We will now start the live Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please do so now, audience members. Just click on that Ask a Question drop-down box located on the far left of your presentation window. Type your question into the box that appears on the screen and click that Send button. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for. So let's take a look at our incoming questions from our audience members. Jennifer, the first question coming in is, how do people get involved?
Well, we try to offer as many opportunities as possible, and we require no commitment. So people are welcome to drop in on any activity or project that interests them. It is all voluntary. You cannot refer someone and go, I think so-and-so really has some compassion fatigue issues. They have to come to us. We work really hard to vary the times and locations because, as I mentioned, we have a large campus, so we try to make it as easily as possible. And also, we have an email list as well as a Facebook group that people are welcome to join as another way to get information from us.
Thank you. Our next question is it necessary to have trained counselors available?
I would say absolutely yes. Essentially, a lot of these issues are mental health issues, and with anything like that, you can end up with some serious concerns that are best handled by professionals. And we've also found that by reaching out to them ahead of time, we can make sure that we've set up a supportive environment, which we feel better referring our employees to than, say, a therapist or counselor that might not be comfortable with what we do.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the incoming questions from our audience members. Just want to remind them that any questions not asked today will be answered via email. We have time for one more question, Jennifer. Here's the last one. Where does the funding come from?
Well, the short answer is we don't have any, but the support for our employee time, so for people attending events and meetings, comes from management. And then a lot of the events that you see are sponsored by the Animal Enrichment Committee. We actually roll the expenditures for those under the cost center for each species, as we will eventually be using those items for enrichment. We design those projects with minimal cost, but right now we have no overall program support or official funds that are just for the compassion fatigue group.
Thank you for that. And Jennifer, do you want to provide the audience members with any closing remarks before we close our webinar today?
Nope, just feel free to email more questions. I'm happy to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we go, I do want to once again thank you for your presentation, and I'd also like to thank LabRoots for making today's educational webcast possible. I want to remind everyone that today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through May of 2018. You'll receive an email from LabRoots letting you know this webcast will be available for replay. Please share that announcement with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. That's all for now, and thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
All righty, perfect.